rehypothecation, which we at Paladin actually see a ton of, and it's part of what we do. So I actually believe that rehypothecation is going to bring Bitcoin and blockchain into the next level of banking. And we'll also start to see stock transfer agents change dramatically, but we could talk about that. Anyone who wants to talk about custody, I can go at that all day. Okay, our next panel, finding the next billion users. Sounds daunting, and if anybody knows how to do it, it's Terpin. We've got Stephen Sprague, the CEO of Rivetz, Tomi Ayorinde, the co-founder and CEO of Crowdforce, Sonny Singh, the chief commercial officer of BitPay. I hope I didn't butcher your names. Come on up here, folks. The next billion users. Do we have a billion users already?
Well, that's what this is all about.
So it should be the first billion users.
The first billion.
We should rename this the first billion users.
The first billion is the goal.
A microphone, someone. All to you.
And, okay, great, we got Sonny here. Okay, so this panel really is going to be about, and I've said a number of times, you know, where are we at in the development of this? And obviously, Trace just gave us a really long-term perspective for somebody who's, you know, been in this space since he was recommending it, you know, on radio shows and in his newsletters for when it was a nickel, and obviously now he's talking what it's going to look like 50 to 60 years from now. So, and again, Bitcoin doesn't even stop, you know, generating new Bitcoins, many halvings in the future until 2140. So that's over 100 years from now. So, but we're going to talk about, you know, we're right now at, you know, depending on whose numbers you use, somewhere between 25 and 40 million, not wallets, but users. Do you have an accurate statistic on that?
Well, I mean, blockchain says they have 25 million users. Coinbase says they have 25 million users. BitPay has 1.5 million wallet users. So somewhere between 30 to 50 seems right, because I'm sure people have multiple wallets.
Okay. So even if we split the difference and say 40 million, that's about where we were in maybe 1995 in terms of internet users. 1994, I remember the number was 20 million. And today, anybody, how many internet users? It's 4 billion. 4 billion. And so there's no reason, you know, and social media, you know, basically didn't exist until about 2002 with Rise, and then MySpace in 2003, Friendster, and, you know, again, very small number of users. Facebook alone now is 2 billion. So because we don't have to rebuild the internet, things we're building on top of the internet scaled more quickly. But even if blockchain scales at the exact same pace as the internet, that means count forward 20 years, and we'll be at 4 billion users. But before we get to 4 billion, we have to get to 100 million, and we have to get to 500 million, and a billion just sort of seems like a nice round number. And Stephen, do you want to talk about some of the conversations we've had, or is it a little premature?
No, sure. I actually think, and we talked about this before, but I have started to have a different analogy. So we talk about the analogy of the internet, but I actually think the analogy of the early days of multimedia embedded in PCs is a better example, because it was complicated, but you could make it work. So in 1994, if you had a PC, you could install a Sound Blaster card, then you could pick which drivers you had in order to make your Sound Blaster card work with the game you installed, and if the game didn't support the right drivers, the game wouldn't work. And so the probability that you had a healthy experience with your multimedia computer first time out of the box was relatively low. And then they standardized the capabilities with plug and play in 1998 as a standard component in all the PCs. And we have an expectation today that you just play an MP3 file and it works. And you look at the industries that got launched by just standardizing plug and play multimedia was enormous. And I think in some ways, blockchain needs that same thing. We need the hardware and we need the protection models for a wallet built into the devices we have. We want the devices we have to support crypto. So Rivetz works on that, but probably the most interesting thing we showed at Mobile World Congress 6 weeks ago with Telefonica, the first dual root of trust wallet, enabling a carrier to offer a solution in a mobile phone where instead of just relying on the manufacturer's device and its chips to protect your key, like a secure enclave in either an iPhone or a Samsung phone, or actually all the ARM chipsets have them in them, what we did is dual roots of trust. So we put half of your private key infrastructure in the manufacturer's supply chain and half of your private key infrastructure in the SIM module supply chain. That little chip we're all familiar with that you can take in and out of your phone, the one that Michael lost control of, minor technical detail.
AT&T lost control of.
Yes. And so the task here is to help engage the carriers in the process of helping us to manage our keys. Not by giving them control of the keys, but giving them tools that they can use, that we can use on our behalf, that they can help us with to manage our keys. And so this is how we believe you can get crypto built in as a standard capability in every consumer phone on the marketplace. And so today that capability is available so we can provision like 750 million devices over the air today. As we add the dual root of trust capability with Telefonica in the spring of 2019, it will give us the capability to deploy to their entire 360 million subscriber base. And what's fun is, once they started to go down this path, we were just at an event actually just a few weeks ago in Madrid with them, and we talked to a bunch of their other carrier partners, and they're like, well, gee, we could do this. And so we now, I would say, have lightly circled somewhere around 1.2 billion end users worth of devices for which, with very little software change, we could give you a better than any current available hardware wallet in the marketplace solution for crypto protection and device. And so we think that's what consumer grade, mass market crypto control looks like. Now, should you put all of Roger's coins in one of these wallets? No. I'll be first to say that. Think of this as a really good, probably $1 million vault. Probably more like a $100,000 vault, but really a good $1 million vault. Which means that, you had an alarm system on your house, you have a safe. Like most of us bought a little safe, we bought it from Walmart, stuck it in the closet. Nobody bolts it to the wall in the closet. Like, the thing isn't that heavy. Like, even if you fill it with gold, it's not that heavy. You don't have enough gold, right? What you need is like 10,000 pounds of gold. Put that in the safe in the basement, and that's a real pain in the ass to move. So like, the challenge here is, how do we anchor it in hardware? How do we bring the carriers to play? How do we leverage their distribution? Because at the end of the day, the thing we forget is that carriers buy handsets. Then they sell them to us. And so if you want a capability extended and expanded and enhanced within the quality of a handset over time, you don't call Huawei, because they don't want to build stuff for one customer. They want to build stuff for somebody who buys $6 billion worth of stuff from them, which is the current billings between Telefonica and Huawei. And so they at least get the phone answered. So it's an interesting process to look at how do we employ a carrier to provide us with the tools to operate. And we look back and we're like, God, carriers are a pain in the ass. But carriers brought us the internet. They gave us modems, then DSL, then fiber. And then some fool at some carrier somewhere put a browser in a mobile phone. Remember the first browsers? Like typing each letter with the new number pad one at a time. And now, like, can you live without a browser on your phone? Right? So they do a really good job of this distribution. So I think that devices operate chains. If we're going to have devices operate chains at scale, we need the carriers to participate because they control the design of all the devices. Then we need the device manufacturers to have these components so they can reuse them everywhere. So what you want, like I had this conversation with Foxconn the other day so Foxconn needs the Bill Gates moment. They need to send a memo out that says, blockchain's going to be huge. And we should build it into everything. Because until actually Foxconn builds blockchain into everything, how the hell is your refrigerator going to have a wallet? It's a really interesting question. Like, we have to build it in. We need it in the dishwashers. We need it in the coffee machines. We need it in. The manufacturers who build devices are the ones who build blockchain in. Then the chains are operated by the devices. And that's how I think we get to the next billion users.
And the telephone companies, which, again, despite my $225 million lawsuit against AT&T, which they honestly, I mean, I'm a big spokesperson. I'm a big fan of the potential of the telcos. I think that there's a number of ways. What Steven suggests is a great way of having secure hardware wallets for hundreds of millions of people, and everybody can send. Forget about your bank at that point. You can send to any other user on the network, like M-Pesa does with cell phone minutes in Africa. We're going to get that with Tomi in a second. But they have to fix the problem first, carrot and the stick. They have to fix this problem where they give up people's information.
We need to eliminate. So the trick here is we need to engage the carrier in the thing they do, which is, oh my God, I lost my phone. Call your carrier and turn your phone off. They're actually really good at that.
They're not.
No.
They're not, because here's the problem. When you're high profile and you ask for a do not port, they'll give you do not port. With AT&T, or if you don't ask for the do not port, anybody who's crooked on the inside, and this happened to us and to other people, you call and say turn it off, it's turned off. 5 minutes later, it's turned back on again because it's user error. But Steven, we're gonna handle this on the security panel a little bit later. I want to stick to adoption. You're on three times today between that and your Rivetz presentation too. So with Safaricom, really kind of caused, I think, well, first of all, Africa was very big in terms of like, how do we get landline phones to people in Africa? How are we gonna? It's like, no, just hurdle over there and just get rid of cell phone, right? An airdrop. And then it's just like, how do we go and eliminate the problem that people don't have banks, and it's just it's really keeping the people back. And Safaricom said, hey, cell phone minutes in Kenya, and now everybody knows that the use case in Africa is probably more desperately needed than any other place on Earth. Obviously, you have the general corruption you have in governments everywhere, but tell us a little bit about, in your opinion, what kind of the Kenya experiment with Safaricom, how that's evolved, and then how we go to crypto, what you're doing with both Crowdforce and with Flash.
Awesome, thanks for having me here. In Africa, we're kind of the masters of leapfrogging everything. And I think with blockchain, we are going to leapfrog the traditional banking systems as it is today. Oh, okay. Okay, so I was saying that we're the masters of leapfrogging. And I think that the way we leapfrog landlines, we're going to also leapfrog the traditional banking systems today. And we saw that already with Safaricom. That has created Safaricom to become a monster that the central bank is really worried about right now. They control a lot of mobile money in Kenya and most of East Africa. I think that blockchain has the potential to transform African countries more than it has developed countries. And so what we're doing, and we think the next billion users can actually come from there. However, we need to create a way to enable micropayments, microtransactions, micro money transfers across borders with ease, and we need to enable liquidity. And that's where blockchain comes into place. Because with Crowdforce, what we're doing now is we're building this merchant network, right? All these underbanked and unbanked already do transactions today. They do it through their local retail store. Everything, right? They trust him because they see him, right? So they'll go do it there. If we are converting those merchants and enabling them with a mobile app and a POS that enables them to render simple microtransactions to the mass market, and these people can now start to acquire crypto assets, pay with crypto assets, pay their utility bills with crypto assets, and more importantly, with the partnership with Flash, right? Flash enables fast, low-cost remittances, right? What that means is that you start to see a lot of very fast micro remittances down to Africa, and the guy can walk up to the closest retail store and cash it out in less than a few minutes. He can even wait in the retail store and get it immediately. So that's kind of what we're doing in Crowdforce. And as we build out this network, it creates an infrastructure for all other blockchain businesses to be able to provide microservices down to the last mile, right? Because I see that there's a lot of fancy blockchain products that are being created, right? The biggest problem they have is how do we drive it down to the unbanked and directly to the last mile? And we are creating that human infrastructure for them to come layer on top, right? And I think it's our best option at banking the unbanked. It's our best option at bringing the next billion users to the blockchain.
Thank you. So obviously different perspectives here. You've already at BitPay sort of had a long history of being able to go and have merchants accept Bitcoin. Vinny Lingham, of course, said that this has actually been a bad thing for the price of Bitcoin because merchants would just go and sell it immediately to fiat. Is that changing any? Because I think they can look back now and say, gosh, if I'd held on to some of that $200 Bitcoin, that would have been a good investment.
Yeah, so at BitPay, we process for merchants like Microsoft, Newegg, and last year we processed $1.3 billion in payments. So yes, some people around the world are actually spending their Bitcoin. And I think it goes to the point that, I've been in Silicon Valley for over 15 years in fintech, and nothing moves fast in fintech. Bitcoin has moved at light speed, though. We've never seen something move this fast in the world of fintech. And it's not because my VP of marketing and the Coinbase VP of marketing got together and made a marketing strategy. It just happened naturally on its own. Everything we tried to do for marketing, we failed on its own probably. It happened naturally where people in India know about Bitcoin. People in Africa know about Bitcoin. People in Latin America know about Bitcoin. And it was through no marketing program of our own. It just happened naturally. Whereas the same brand recognition as Coca-Cola, IBM, Google, Facebook, Bitcoin, it's all the same level of brand awareness now. So it's truly amazing that way. So to answer your question though, are merchants now starting to, because at BitPay we allow Microsoft to accept Bitcoin, but we convert it from Microsoft and they get settled in USD. Are merchants starting to accept Bitcoin and hold it more? No, not yet. I don't see that happening still for a couple more years because it's still hard for their tax team, finance team, and accounting team and compliance team to understand how to do it, and it's just too complicated for them. They don't care about that.
Taxes are fairly simple, but I guess it's the compliance is a big thing, or do they just not have copies of LibreTax and some of these other things?
Yeah, Microsoft doesn't use LibreTax right now. So, and the problem is Microsoft's just trying to get it on board in their website, get people using it, see what happens actually. That itself was a big production, right, to get companies. And the great thing is now when I meet with the Fortune 2000 brands all over the world, 4 years ago they thought Bitcoin was crazy, it was for drugs. 2 years ago they thought no one used it, and now they're like, we plan on implementing it actually, and it's in the roadmap. We just have to figure out if we're going to prioritize it over Apple Pay or Chase Pay, but we're definitely doing it in the next couple of years.
And 1.3 billion is a substantial number, and where was it, say, 4 years ago?
4 years ago we were processing around 50 million.
50 million to 1.3 billion. Those are exceptional growth.
Yeah, and the 50 million 4 years ago was from Bitcoin miners selling mining equipment. And now the 1.3 billion comes from Microsoft and Newegg, and also a lot of B2B customers around the world, which is very exciting. So we have Fortune 5,000 companies that will have a supplier in Korea, and they're based in America, and they'll have them pay $1 million via Bitcoin in BitPay because it's cheaper and quicker than a bank wire. We're able to move money around the world in, let's say, a 1% one business day and settle them in fiat, and a bank wire takes 3 to 5 days and costs 3 to 4%. So these large companies see the cost savings, and the old CFO guy who doesn't even know what Bitcoin is says, use your Bit thing, whatever you guys call yourself, and get my money cheaper, quicker to this point, and you got a deal.
And I guess there it's sort of a buying of Bitcoin and a selling, so it's not just a take it in and sell. So when it's being used for sort of cross-border payments on a large scale, it's really sort of a net zero effect on the price, other than obviously you're able to arbitrage it and hopefully be able to make some money on the asset growth.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that people talk about how we're going to use Bitcoin. Bitcoin is used all over the world for a variety of different use cases, and I'm all about what pain point is it solving. In America, it doesn't really solve a pain point. It's mostly used for speculation, which is fine. Some people believe it's better hedged against their own currency. They don't like the government. That's fine. We have a development team in Argentina. So we at BitPay, we get part of our salary in Bitcoin. So I get part of my salary in Bitcoin every week. The development team in Argentina takes 100% of the salary in Bitcoin. Why? Not because they think the price of Bitcoin is going up, because they think their own currency is going down every month. Right? So they don't care about the Bitcoin going up. It's a currency hedge for themselves, actually. Also, people in India might use Bitcoin because they want to go shopping on an American website. Their Indian credit card wouldn't work. So again, it's solving real pain points again. The cross-border use case, again, I said, that's solving a pain point. They don't care about the price of Bitcoin. They buy the Bitcoin that day and send it over to America, so the price has no relevance to them, actually. It's solving pain points, and that's what you look for. Like the refrigerator that's going to have Bitcoin wallets, that's not going to be a big hit in India for a long time, right? They don't care about that, right? That might be great in America, but every region has their own use case and reason to use Bitcoin, which is really exciting, actually. But the media just focuses on America and the price, though, a lot of times.
No, I mean, many years ago, I was, speaking at a conference in Toronto, and I was, explaining to the cab driver about Bitcoin, and he's like, "You mean I could send money to, my mother in India?" And then he was like, "But how do I turn it into rupees?" Right? And so obviously you have that solution. How many currencies do you convert into right now?
We settle into about 10, 15 currencies right now,
Okay.
and then we accept Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and we'll slowly start onboarding new currencies as we find ones that are trustworthy and safe, like we think.
Ethereum?
In the pipeline, we think, yeah.
Okay. Because what Vinny had said about how the, ICOs are burning $1 billion a month and they're not paying their companies in crypto, they're paying them in cash. I mean, you look at the companies who are very successful that go back to 2011, 2012, 2013. You still offer, and say, hey, we'd like you to accept Bitcoin as a salary. It's a good thing. So
Yeah, so what we see actually in the last year, we see a lot of law firms, hosting centers, coming to us actually, because there are companies that want to pay in Bitcoin now.
Right.
And it's pretty amazing. They have no choice. The law firms, all the large ones in America do now. They don't announce it publicly, but they all do because their clients are paying,
Right.
and they want to accept their money. So they sign up with us. Actually, we help them out. So it's great to see the Bitcoin community starting to spend more, but Vinny's right. It needs to be happening a lot more, actually. We should all be eating our own dog food because these vendors will accept Bitcoin because we made it risk-free and easy for them.
And I'd say historically about half of the sponsorship money that we get is paid in Bitcoin or Ethereum. We have in the past had a GoCoin button, one of your competitors,
Yeah, sure.
to convert, and I think there was a bug in there, so we're going to be rebuilding it. But we'll definitely talk to you and see what you're offering versus them, and we definitely want to get that back on there to encourage people to get in early, even if they're new to the space.
Yeah, and the one thing I would say is companies like BitPay, Coinbase, Circle that were started in 2011, went through a lot of ups and downs, and we actually, built out our business model when the price of Bitcoin was $200 after it came down from $1,200. So the key is for all these new companies that are out there, build your business model to be irrelevant of the price of Bitcoin. Whether it be $20,000, $1, or $50,000, you can't count on that. Your business needs to work regardless of what happens to the price of Bitcoin.
So I have to get back on track here. I can't go over on every panel. So really quickly, we'll get one question from the audience. You got time for one all the way in the back.
Coming, or you can just shout.
Good morning. My name is Lynn Fisher, and I'm with Vault Logic. And Vault Logic is a smart ATM that does buy, sell, and a bunch of other wonderful cash apps, which is a cash as a service platform.
And on display in the next room.
Thank you very much. My question is this, is that, when you're a hammer, everything's a nail. So from our perspective, we see the adoption rate of all cryptocurrencies and many of these other wonderful dApps and things that are coming about. These things are coming about, but the physical embodiment of taking the digital, ethereal kind of idea of cryptocurrency and embodying it into the third dimension in a box that people are used to using, we feel is tantamount to the adoption process. I'm just curious to the whole panel what you guys think about the fact that ATMs and BTMs are really the only physical point of presence for buying cryptocurrency right now.
So yeah, I think one of the real challenges is how we get this so that it's grandma simple. How do you get money into the system, as well as then how do we generate use? And I think what we haven't seen yet is the real crescendo of use. Certainly we have in Bitcoin in a payment model, but I don't think we've seen it in use in all the stories that all of us have been telling about how we're going to use this token-based economic model to do a variety of other things. You know, ICOs are interesting, but it's what the ICOs build with those tokens that could really generate an incredible volume of daily use. So I think it's both, but it's how do we get that $2 into the device?
Yeah, well, just very quickly, so we see, obviously, we're able to take in cash and do some very interesting cash vaulting, and cash management technologies, but just as a side note, utility is the absolute, next evolution of moving away from greed, which a lot of the ICO market has been, built upon, but rightfully so. I mean, you have to have a mad rush, but we see the ability to transact those dollars as key to utility.
And so in Africa, do you see sort of ATMs as part of the solution, or is it really kind of handling things?
In Africa, we see more of what you would call here human ATMs, right? You have a merchant, he already has cash flow, right? Rather than end the day with a lot of cash and take it to the bank, right, or take it home, he could recycle that cash and make profit on it, and at the end of the day, he doesn't have cash and it goes home. So when you have so many merchants providing liquidity, right, you realize that everybody in Africa is just going to bank each other and move on with their lives. Yeah, that's the way we look at it.
As I said again, fintech moves very slowly, right? So we're not going to replace the banking system tomorrow, so it's better to partner with them in some aspects. So at BitPay, he launched the BitPay debit card. You can take Bitcoin and load it onto the card and then spend anywhere Visa's accepted, actually. These are kind of, halfway points we're making a compromise where the banking world's working together with the crypto world to make it easier for adoption, actually. So rather than get every merchant, like McDonald's, accept Bitcoin, they accept Visa, I can load Bitcoin onto the Visa and then go spend it, actually. So little baby steps like that are making it easier, but eventually it'll come over time.
Thank you, panelists. And we got this panel out on time, and I will turn it back over to Pamela to introduce the panelists who can come up now for the equity versus tokens. Thank you, panelists.